Okay, students, now we're going to talk about the fetal skull. Okay, now again, before we start writing, I'm going to show you a fetal skull and you're going to first pay attention here, right? Now, in the fetal skull, as you can see, I have marked with F. These are the two frontal bones. And the suture which lies between these two frontal bones, that is the frontal suture, right? Then you have the two parietal bones. Now, the suture which separates the frontal bones from the parietal bone, that is the coronal suture, right? And the suture which lies between the two parietal bones, that is your sagittal suture, right? And then you have the occipital bone over here, and the suture which separates the parietal bone from the occipital bone, that is the lambdoid suture. So we have the frontal suture which is separating the two frontal bones, the left and the right side frontal bone. Then the frontal bone is separated from the parietal bone by the coronal suture. The two parietal bones are separated, the left and the right parietal bones are separated by the sagittal suture. And the parietal bone is separated from the occipital bone by the lambdoid suture, right? Now, the gaps between the suture lines, that is what is called as the fontanelle, right? So, when a baby is born, fetal skull has got 6 fontanelles at that time, and that's a very, very important question. But out of the 6 fontanelles, the 2 most important fontanelles are the anterior fontanelle and the posterior fontanelle. Now, anterior fontanelle, if you see its boundaries, it is formed by, the boundaries are the frontal suture anteriorly, the sagittal suture posteriorly, and the left and the right coronal sutures on both the sides, right? So it is diamond shaped, as you can see over here, the anterior fontanelle, and the transverse diameter and the AP diameter, both of the anterior fontanelle, they are 3 centimeters, and this anterior fontanelle, it is ossified by 6 months after birth. Right, it is ossified by 18 months after birth, right? Now, this over here is the posterior fontanelle, and as you can see that this posterior fontanelle, it is triangular in shape, and anteriorly it is bounded by the sagittal suture, and both the sides we have the left and the right lambdoid suture. Now, it is the posterior fontanelle which is lying close to the occiput. Can you see it's lying close to the occipital bone? So, a few important things which you have to note about the fontanelles are, number 1 is the shape, and that is anterior fontanelle is diamond shaped or rhomboid shaped, and posterior fontanelle is triangular shape. Why I'm telling you to remember this is because when in the next video, I'm going to talk about position of the fetus, right? Then we are going to see that how we decide the position of the fetus if images are given. And then this point is going to come handy, that anterior fontanelle is diamond shaped, posterior fontanelle is triangular. It is the posterior fontanelle which is lying near the occipital bone. Now, anterior fontanelle is called as bragma and posterior fontanelle is called as lambda, right? What is the occiput? Occiput is the bony prominence over here in the occipital bone, the bony prominence, that is the occipital protuberance, or that is also called as the occiput, right? And what is a sinciput? Sinciput is the part of the skull which is lying anterior to the anterior fontanelle, right? So the part of the skull anterior to the anterior fontanelle which is comprising of the frontal bones, right? So over here, this prominence which you feel over here, the rounded part over here, right? That is the sinciput. Is that clear to you? So this rounded part over here is the sinciput. This over here is the occiput. This is the anterior fontanelle. This is the posterior fontanelle. Anterior fontanelle diamond shaped, posterior fontanelle triangular shaped. Clear to all of you? Okay. So quickly let us draw this. So we have the two frontal bones. The suture which lies between the two frontal bones, that is the frontal suture. This curved part over here, that will become the sinciput. right? Then these are the parietal bones. The suture which separates frontal and parietal bone, that is the coronal suture. So we have the left and the right coronal suture. The suture which separates the two parietal bones is the sagittal suture. Now this gap which you are finding over here, the gap between the suture lines, this gap is the anterior fontanelle, right? Anterior fontanelle is diamond shaped or it is rhomboid shaped, right? And its diameters, AP and transverse diameters, both are 3 centimeters each, right? Then let's go further. Over here, we have posteriorly the occipital bone. This suture which is separating the parietal bone and the occipital bone, that is the lambdoid suture. This gap which you are finding, the triangular gap, this is the posterior fontanelle. Another name for posterior fontanelle is lambda. Another name for anterior fontanelle is bragma, right? Anterior fontanelle, it is triangular and its AP diameter and transverse diameter, they are 1.2 centimeters, right? So this is what you had to remember about the anterior fontanelle and about posterior fontanelle. Other details I'm sure you are going to be taught in pediatrics. Yes, anterior fontanelle, it closes by 18 months and posterior fontanelle at term it ossifies, right? So this is what I have to tell you about the suture, about the fontanelles and about the sutures. You know what is sinciput, and now this posterior most point over here, this will be the occiput. Right? So anteriorly the prominence is the sinciput and posteriorly the prominence is the occiput. Clear to all of you? The last thing which you have to write over here, that at birth there are 6 fontanelles. Right? Now let's talk about the diameters of the fetal skull. Now, in skull, there will be AP diameters and there will be transverse diameters. As you can see from here, always AP diameters will be longer than the transverse diameters, right? That's a general rule which you will have to remember, that always the AP diameter will be longer than any of the transverse diameters. Right? Now, in AP diameter, what you have to remember? In AP diameter, you have to remember that the longest AP diameter is mento-vertical diameter, and that is 14 centimeters. And second longest is submento-vertical, which is equal to occipitofrontal, and both of them are 11.5 centimeters each. So these are the only 2 values which you have to remember. The longest AP diameter is mento-vertical, 14 centimeters, and the second longest is submento-vertical or occipitofrontal. Both of them are 11.5 centimeters each. Right? Now, in case of bro presentation, the engaging AP diameter is mento-vertical diameter. And just now I told you that mento-vertical diameter is 14 centimeters. Now, all of you know that when the cervix is fully dilated, a fully dilated cervix is 10 centimeters. So, obviously, a 14 centimeter diameter, it cannot pass through a 10 centimeter cervix. That is why in bro presentation, always you have to go for cesarean section. Clear to all of you? Because in bro presentation, the engaging diameter is the largest one, and that is the mento-vertical diameter, which is 14 centimeters. Right? As of now, about AP diameters, this is all what you have to remember. Let's talk about the transverse diameters. Now, transverse diameters of the skull, right, they are always smaller than AP diameter. That's a thumb rule which you have to remember. Apart from that, if you have to remember the transverse diameter, I have a very easy mnemonic for you, and that is Miss Tina So Pretty. So Miss is smallest, then bigger than Miss is Tina, then we have So, and the largest one is Pretty. So in that order, right? So it's in the ascending order. Miss Tina So Pretty, where M stands for bimastoid diameter, T stands for bitemporal diameter, S stands for super subparietal diameter, and P stands for biparietal diameter. And what are their values? 7.5, 8, 8.5 and 9.5. Right? So it begins from 7.5, then it goes to 8, then 8.5, and then it is 9.5. So please remember that the largest transverse diameter of the fetal head is biparietal diameter. That's very, very important for you to remember. And the value of biparietal diameter is 9.5 centimeters. This value you have to remember, right? Now, based on this much information, all your questions on diameters of the fetal skull will be solved, even if you don't remember other diameters and their values. How come? Let's have a look at the question. So over here, we have a question which says the smallest diameter of the fetal skull is, and the options given to you are bitemporal diameter, occipitofrontal, suboccipitobrachmatic, and bimastoid diameter. So, bachcho, remember, whenever they are saying smallest diameter, right? Whenever they talk about smallest, we know that transverse diameters, they are smaller than AP diameter. So, if in your questions, they are talking about smallest diameter, you have to look at transverse diameters. You don't have to think about AP diameters. Right? So in your options, look at what transverse diameters are given in the option. Forget about AP at this point of time because they have asked you about smallest one. Right? So amongst the options, the transverse diameters which are given to us are bitemporal diameter and bimastoid. And I told you it is Miss Tina So Pretty. Right? So Miss will always be smaller than Tina. That means your answer will be bimastoid diameter. Even if you don't remember the values, that's okay. You have come to an answer. Right? Now suppose this question was not about the smallest diameter. This question was the other way around, and they had said the longest diameter of the fetal skull is. Now, again, the same thing. Just now I told you AP diameters are longer than transverse diameters. So when they are talking about longest diameters, which diameters are you going to consider? You are going to think only about AP diameters. You are not going to think about transverse diameters, right? So I am not going to think about these two. I have to concentrate in the options only on the AP diameters, right? And in AP diameters, I told you that the longest one is mentovertical. So what you have to do next is see in the options if mentovertical is given. So in our options, mentovertical is not given. Then I told you that the second longest is submentovertical or occipitofrontal, and both of them are 11.5. Now look in the options whether submentovertical is given. No. Whether occipitofrontal is given. Yes. So your answer becomes occipitofrontal. Is that clear to you how you are going to deal with questions on fetal diameters of the fetal skull? Right? Very good. Now if you have understood this, now let's talk about the parts of the fetal skull. Now, in order to understand parts of the fetal skull, again, please don't look at the table just now. look at the fetal skull which is in my hand just now. After this, I'm going to make you palpate the parts on your head, and then we are going to look at this table, right? So first look here. Just now I told you this over here is the anterior fontanelle and this over here is the posterior fontanelle, right? Now the part of the skull which lies between the anterior fontanelle and posterior fontanelle, that is what is called as vertex, right? So what is vertex? Vertex is that part of the skull which is lying between anterior fontanelle and posterior fontanelle, right? Now, the part of the skull which lies between anterior fontanelle and root of the nose, this part over here. So this entire part over here, right? So between anterior fontanelle and root of the nose, this part over here, this is what is brow, right? And technically speaking, brow and sinciput are the same thing, right? Now, then comes the third part. Third part is the part which lies between the root of the nose and the chin. This part over here. So this over here is the face, right? So we have three important parts of the fetal skull. Now I want all of you to obviously you cannot palpate your anterior fontanelle and posterior fontanelle, but imagine your anterior fontanelle is somewhere here and your posterior fontanelle is here. So the part of the skull which is lying between anterior fontanelle and posterior fontanelle, that is what is called as vertex, right? Now the part of the skull which is lying between anterior fontanelle and root of the nose, this part over here, this is what is brow. So your eyebrows are here, right? This part, this is brow, right? And the part of the skull which lies between the root of the nose and the chin or the mentum, this part, this is the face, right? So we have the face here, the brow here, and the vertex there. This is clear to all of you? Now, if this is clear, now make this table, and in the table, make 4 columns, right? In the first column, write part. In the second column, write definition. Just now, I want all of you only to write the part and the definition, right? Now, I am continuing further. You are going to pause your video here, write the part and the definition, and then continue, right? Now look. This over here is the fetus. This over here, diamond shaped, what I have made is anterior fontanelle. And this over here is posterior fontanelle. So anterior fontanelle, posterior fontanelle. Now, if the head of the baby is fully flexed, this is how the head of the baby is fully flexed, right? This is flexion. Now, when the head of the baby is fully flexed or it is partially flexed, so when I am fully flexing it or when I am partially flexing it, and when I am doing a per-vaginal examination, which part of the skull my fingers are touching? My fingers are touching the vertex, right? So whether the head is fully flexed, then also I am touching the vertex. Whether the head is partially flexed, then also the vertex is being touched, right? So in case of fully flexed head or partially flexed head, the part which you are going to touch will be the vertex, right? Now, in case of partially extended head, now this is a partially extended head. Now, in case of a partially extended head, now when I will do a per-vaginal examination, which part is my finger touching? My fingers are touching the brow, right? So, when do you get brow presentation? You get brow presentation when the head of the baby is partially extended, right? Now, Now suppose the head of the baby is fully extended. And now when I'm doing upper vaginal examination, which part is my finger touching? My finger is touching the face, right? So again, I'm telling you, when the head is fully extended, then you will get face, right? So face is seen in a fully extended head. Now, if the head is partially extended, you will get brow. Can you see you are getting brow? Right? All of you in a partially extended head. And if the head is fully flexed, you are getting vertex. Or even if it is partially flexed, still you are getting vertex. Right? So that is the third column. So third column is saying seen in. So when is vertex seen? Vertex is seen in fully flexed or partially flexed head. When is brow seen? Brow is seen in partially extended head. And when is face seen? Face is seen in fully extended head. Right? Now the last part is the engaging diameter. When the head is in vertex presentation, and when will the head be in vertex presentation? When the head of the baby is fully flexed, right? So I'm just telling you technique how you are going to remember what is the engaging diameter in vertex. See, when the head of the baby is fully flexed, it appears as if it is crying, right? So head is fully flexed, it appears as if it is crying, right? And for crying, what is the other word? Sob. Right? So in case of vertex presentation, the engaging diameter is SOB, S-O-B, suboccipitobrachmatic. Right? And suboccipitobrachmatic is 9.5 centimeters. Right? Then in case of brow, just now we did, in case of brow, the engaging diameter is mento-vertical diameter, and that is 14 centimeters. And I told you, because in brow the engaging diameter is mento-vertical diameter, and that is 14 centimeters. So you always have to do a cesarean section. Now, in case of face, it is a combination of them. In vertex, it was suboccipitobrachmatic. In face, it will be submento-brachmatic. In brow, it was mento-vertical. So here it can be submento-vertical. Right? So in case of face, either the engaging diameter will be submento-brachmatic or submento-vertical. Right? Submento-brachmatic again is 9.5 centimeters and submento-vertical is 11.5 centimeters. Right? So quickly let's repeat it. In case of vertex, because the head is fully flexed, so it appears as if the baby is sobbing. Right? So in vertex, the engaging diameter is SOB, suboccipitobrachmatic, and that is 9.5 centimeters. In case of brow, it is mento-vertical, and that is 14 centimeters. In case of face, it's a combination of them. Submento-brachmatic, 9.5 centimeters, or submento-vertical, 11.5 centimeters. Clear to all of you? Okay. So if it is clear to all of you, now there are three important diameters which measure 9.5 centimeters, and you have just done all three of them. What are those three diameters? I want you to write here. If you have forgotten, let me help you. One was suboccipitobrachmatic. Suboccipitobrachmatic is 9.5. Another was submento-brachmatic. Submento-brachmatic is 9.5 centimeters. And the third one, you're struggling to find the third one. It is the biparietal diameter. Biparietal diameter is 9.5 centimeters. Right? Now we have done when the head of the baby is fully flexed, then what happens? When the head of the baby is fully extended, then what happens? When the head is partially extended, then what happens? When the head is partially flexed, then what happens? What if head of the baby is deflexed? It is neither flexed, neither extended, right? It is just deflexed. Now, in case of deflexed head, again the presentation which you get is vertex presentation, right? So whenever the word flexion comes, whether it is complete flexion, whether it is partial flexion, or whether it is deflexion, what you are going to get is vertex. When your fingers are going to touch, you are going to touch the vertex of the baby, right? On per vaginal examination, right? Now, in case of deflexed head, although the presenting part is vertex, but in case of deflexed head, the engaging diameter is not suboccipitobrachmatic. In case of deflexed head, the engaging diameter is occipitofrontal or suboccipitofrontal. And just now we did occipitofrontal was 11.5 centimeters and suboccipitofrontal, I am telling you, is between 10 to 10.5, right? So remember, in deflexed head also it is vertex presentation. But the problem is suboccipitobrachmatic diameter is not engaging. Suboccipitobrachmatic diameter was 9.5 and this is the smallest one, right? Now, in case of deflexed head, it is occipitofrontal diameter, which is 11.5 centimeters, or suboccipitofrontal diameter, which is 10 to 10.5 centimeters, which is engaging. That is why in deflexed head, engagement is delayed. It is delayed, although it is vertex presentation, but because the engaging diameters are bigger than suboccipitobrachmatic, so engagement will be delayed in case of deflexed head. Is that clear to all of you? Okay, so you will understand more about engagement in the next video when we are going to, or maybe in the, in the video on mechanism of labor, where I'm going to tell you more about what is engagement, right? Now, let us have a look at these diameters on the fetal skull, from where they are beginning and from till where they are going. So, the first diameter which we have to see is suboccipitobrachmatic diameter, and suboccipitobrachmatic diameter is the bold black diameter which you can see. Now, as the name suggests, it is suboccipito. Suboccipito means it is not starting from the occipital protuberance. Suboccipito means it is starting below the occipital protuberance from the nape of the neck. And it is going up till brachma. Right? So, suboccipitobrachmatic diameter, it is seen in vertex presentation when the head of the baby is fully flexed or it is partially flexed, and its value is 9.5 centimeters. Right? Now, if the head of the baby is deflexed, you will get suboccipitofrontal or occipitofrontal. Right? Now, suboccipitofrontal, it starts from, so over here we have suboccipitofrontal again, which is going to yellow color, and I'm going to just darken this yellow color so that you can see it properly. So this over here, now I have made it bold, right? So again, it is suboccipito, that means it is going to start from the nape of the neck, and it is frontal, right? So it is going up till the mid of the frontal bone. Right? So suboccipitofrontal diameter, or you can get occipitofrontal diameter. Occipitofrontal diameter is the orange color one which you are seeing over here, which is starting from the occipital protuberance and it is going up till the nape of the, the root of the nasal bone. Right? Have you understood? Okay. Now, that is the diameter which you get in deflexed head. Now, if the head of the baby is partially extended, what do you get? You get bro. And in bro, what is the diameter? In bro, the diameter is mentovertical. As the name suggests, what is mentum? Mentum has to start from the chin, right? So the diameter which is starting from the chin, here the blue color diameter, and where it is going vertical. What is meant by vertical? Vertical means the highest point on the sagittal suture, right? So here, this over here is mento-vertical diameter, which is the longest, and it is 14 centimeters. Clear? Then comes face presentation. In face presentation, you will get submento-vertical, right? Now, sub means below the chin. So it is going to start from below the chin, this green color over here, and vertical means the highest point on the sagittal suture. So from below the chin, it is going up till the highest point of the sagittal suture. So in face, either you get submento-vertical or you get submento-brachmatic. What will you mean by submento-brachmatic? Again, it is going to start from below the chin, this purple color, and it is going to go up till the brachma. So that means it is submento-brachmatic. Have you understood all the diameters of the fetal skull? Right. Okay. Now let's talk about a very important term, and that is molding. What do you understand by the term molding? See, molding is an alteration in the shape of the head while the head is passing through the birth canal during labor. So when the head is passing through the birth canal during labor, the alteration which occurs in the shape of the head, that is what is called as molding, right? So molding can be of 3 grades, grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, or obviously no molding means grade 0. Now grade 1 means that the skull bones, they are touching each other, but they are not overlapping, right? So normally you saw that there is gap between the bones. The skull bones have gap between them, right? But if the skull bones, they come closer and the gap closes and they start touching each other, that is what is called as grade 1 molding. Right? Then we have grade 2. Grade 2 means that the skull bones overlap each other, but they can be separated. And grade 3 means that they have overlapped and they cannot be separated. That's a fixed overlap. Right? So molding means there is an alteration in the shape of the head while it is coming through a birth canal which is resistant, right, during labor. Now, to some degree, molding is normal during labor, right? So, if you are getting grade 1 molding, that can be seen normally, nothing to worry. But if you are seeing that the bones are, overlapping each other. So, if the bones start overlapping each other, then that's a problem. That means grade 2 and grade 3 are a problem. And what is the problem? So, if you are getting grade 2 or grade 3 molding and you are getting slow progress of labor, and so I told you just now, what does that indicate? That indicates cephalopelvic disproportion, right? So, if you are getting grade 2 or grade 3 molding and the progress of labor is slow, that indicates there is CPD. Have you understood what is molding? Okay. Now, if you have understood what is molding, the last thing what I want to tell you about the fetal skull is the swellings which can be seen on the fetal head once the baby is born. Now, there can be 2 types of swellings which can be seen on fetal head. One of them is caput succedaneum and the other is cephalhematoma. Cephalhematoma. So I want all of you to draw this diagram. So first thing what we have, let's draw. This is the skull bone of the fetal head, right? So this is the skull bone. Right? Now, in the skull bones, we have the suture lines. So, these are the suture lines. Right? Now, just above the skull bone is the periosteum. So, black color was your skull bone. And this green color, what I have drawn is periosteum. right? So this green is the periosteum. Now, these suture lines, they are going to extend up till the periosteum like this, right? Now, cephal hematoma is collection of blood just below the periosteum. So, cephal hematoma is collection of blood below the periosteum. After periosteum, I want all of you to draw the scalp. So over here, I have made orange colored scalp. Right? Now, what is caput succedaneum? Caput succedaneum is collection of fluid above the periosteum. Right? So this is the scalp. So caput succedaneum, what you have drawn is caput succedaneum. It is collection of fluid above the periosteum. And what is cephal hematoma? It is collection of blood below the periosteum. Are these diagrams clear to all of you? Now, before I start telling you the differences, in the diagrams, can you see that because this is in caput succedaneum, because fluid is collecting above the periosteum, so deliberately I have drawn it in such a manner that it is crossing the suture line. Right? So this over here is the suture line and this fluid is crossing the suture line. It is present on both the sides of the suture line. Whereas in case of cephal hematoma, because blood is present below the periosteum, so obviously it cannot cross the suture lines. Right? Now, if this is clear, now start writing the differences between caput succedaneum and cephal hematoma. So what is caput succedaneum? Caput succedaneum, it is an edematous swelling which is above the periosteum, whereas cephal hematoma is collection of blood below the periosteum. Now, why caput succedaneum occurs? It occurs because head is stagnant in one position during labor for a long time. Head is stagnant for a long time in one position. So, if head is stagnant in one position for a very long time, then the venous return will decrease and there will be an appearance of an edema there, right? Whereas cephal hematoma, it is due to traumatic instrumental delivery. So if you have done a traumatic instrumental delivery, you will get collection of blood, which is cephal hematoma. Now in caput succedaneum, because it is edema, it will pit on giving pressure. Whereas cephal hematoma will not pit on giving pressure. Caput succedaneum, it can cross the suture lines because it is above the periosteum. Whereas cephal hematoma, it cannot cross the suture lines, right? Caput succedaneum, it is present at birth and then it disappears within few hours of birth. So because in few hours the venous return, obviously once the baby is born, the venous return becomes okay. So within few hours of birth, caput succedaneum will be relieved. Whereas cephal hematoma, it is not present at birth. It appears in a few hours. It appears in a few hours after birth. And then it disappears in a few days. It disappears in a few days, right? Now, as far as management is concerned, we are not going to do anything neither to caput succedaneum, neither to cephalhematoma. You are not going to drain a cephalhematoma. It will automatically resolve. You don't have to do anything. Now, if I ask you that which amongst these will be associated with the fracture of underlying bone. So obviously, because cephalhematoma is due to traumatic instrumental delivery, so it can be associated with fracture of underlying bone. Whereas caput succedaneum is not associated with fracture of underlying bone. Similarly, if I ask you which between the two will be associated with jaundice. Now, because cephalhematoma is collection of blood, and so here what is going to happen? Here the RBCs are going to there will be hemolysis, and the degradation product of the RBCs is bilirubin. So jaundice can be associated with cephalhematoma. It will not be associated with caput succedaneum, right? But yes, if you are getting caput succedaneum, see, as such, caput succedaneum doesn't have much significance. But one significance which you have to remember is that if you are getting caput succedaneum plus there is slow progress of labor, then yes, that is an indication of cephalopelvic disproportion, right? But otherwise, caput succedaneum, that will automatically resolve. You won't have to do anything, right? Sometimes they may ask you that what are the differences between cephalhematoma and meningocele? How are you going to differentiate? So all of you know that in meningocele, cuff impulse would be present. The transillumination test will be positive, whereas in case of cephalhematoma, none of these things would be present, right? So neither would a cuff impulse be present, and neither would the transillumination test would be positive, right? So that is all what I want you to know about fetal skull. Please keep revising, and let's meet in the next video. Take care.